Chapter 25 to 29. The seas of the New World were as turbulent as ever, but aboard the stolen marine ship, Rimuru and Ultima sailed with confidence. They were heading back to Veldanava Island, their stronghold, after the chaos of the Marineford War. It had been a significant event, one that shook the entire world. Whitebeard's death and the subsequent collapse of Marineford had set the stage for a new era, and now, Rimuru and Ultima were returning home as the newly crowned emperors of the sea. The wind rustled through the sails, and the salty air filled the deck as Ultima leaned against the ship's railing, a smirk playing on her lips. Rimuru stood beside her, deep in thought. "I still can't believe it," Rimuru muttered. "Whitebeard is gone, and we're now Yonko." "Believe it," Ultima replied with a chuckle. "The world's changed, and we're at the center of it." Suddenly, a familiar squawk echoed above them. Both of them glanced up to see a news coup, a seagull-like bird carrying a bundle of newspapers in its talons. It swooped down, dropping a rolled-up paper onto the deck before flying off. "Looks like the news has spread," Ultima said, picking up the newspaper with a grin. Rimuru took it from her, his curiosity piqued. As he unrolled the paper, bold headlines greeted them. Whitebeard's successors, Rimuru Tempest and Ultima Tempest, the new emperors of the sea. Underneath the headline, their faces were plastered across the page, accompanied by details of their exploits at Marineford. Well, Ultima teased, leaning closer to read the article. "We're famous." Rimuru raised an eyebrow. "Of course we are. But what's the bounty?" He scanned the article, eyes narrowing as he found the posters. Ultima burst into laughter as Rimuru stared at the numbers, disbelief flashing across his face. "Wait, what? Why is your bounty higher than mine?" "Ultima bounty 3,500,000,000 berries. Rimuru bounty 3 billion berries." She grinned, clearly enjoying his confusion. "Oh, this is perfect. Perfect. How is this perfect?" Rimuru frowned, crossing his arms. "We did the same thing at Marineford. We killed Whitebeard together. Why is your bounty higher?" Ultima wiped a tear from her eye, her laughter still bubbling up. "It's simple, Rimuru. It's because I have the Tremor fruit now. Whitebeard's power was legendary, and now that it's mine, the world sees me as a bigger threat." Rimuru narrowed his eyes at her, though there was no real malice behind his gaze. "Oh, so now you're the bigger threat, huh? Well, clearly." She waved the newspaper in front of him. "It says so right here. And let's be real, Rimuru, my power to destroy entire islands is pretty scary, even by our standards." Rimuru rolled his eyes, though a smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "You're impossible. The Marines clearly have no idea who they're dealing with." "Ah, is someone upset that their bounty isn't as high?" Ultima teased, poking him in the side. "Don't worry, maybe you'll catch up one day. You're insufferable." Rimuru sighed, but he couldn't suppress a grin. "But fine, you've got me this time. Let's see how long that lasts." Ultima's laughter echoed across the deck, her teasing far from over. "Oh, I'm never letting you live this down, Rimuru. Every time you think you're catching up, I'll just remind you of this moment. Me, Ultima Tempest, with the higher bounty." Rimuru shook his head, chuckling despite himself. "You know, you're way too smug for your own good. And you're way too serious about this whole bounty thing." Ultima leaned back, her arms behind her head. "But hey, I get it. You're used to being the best, and now you're just a little bit behind me. It must sting. Sting, please." Rimuru smirked. "I'm just getting started." The two of them fell into a comfortable silence, the waves gently rocking the ship as they sailed deeper into the new world. Rimuru glanced back at the horizon, his thoughts returning to their next steps. "So," he began, breaking the silence, "we're Yonko now. We've claimed Whitebeard's territory, and the world knows who we are. What's next?" Ultima leaned against the railing, her gaze thoughtful. "Next, we solidify our control. Veldanava Island is already ours, but Whitebeard had territories all over the New World. We need to make sure the others Yonkas know not to mess with what's ours." Rimuru nodded. "Agreed. We'll take control of his islands and build up our forces. But first, we head back to Veldanava. We've been away for too long." Ultima grinned. "Exactly. And once we're back, we can start planning our next move. Maybe even have a little fun while we're at it." "I like the sound of that," Rimuru replied, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "But no more sinking islands for now, okay?" Ultima pouted playfully. "No promises." 3 days passed aboard the marine ship, the journey to Veldanava Island drawing closer with each hour. Rimuru and Ultima spent much of their time discussing strategies, planning how to expand their influence and secure Whitebeard's former territories. Despite Ultima's playful demeanor, there was a seriousness to their discussions. They both knew that as Yonko, they would be targets for other powerful figures in the New World. On the morning of the third day, the familiar silhouette of Veldoria Island finally came into view on the horizon. There it is, Rimuru said, spotting the island first. Home. Ultima joined him at the bow of the ship, her eyes gleaming with excitement. It's been too long. I can't wait to see what's changed while we were gone. The island was a vast, sprawling territory, surrounded by jagged cliffs and lush forests. It was a place of power, fortified by Rimuru and Ultima's forces over the years. Veldoria was their sanctuary, their base of operations in the unpredictable seas of the New World. As the ship approached the island, Ultima stretched her arms above her head. I wonder if anyone's tried to cause trouble while we were gone. Not that it would end well for them. Rimuru chuckled. They'd have to be pretty stupid to try anything, especially now that we've returned as Yonko. The ship docked at the island's port, and as they disembarked, they were greeted by their loyal forces. Soldiers stood at attention, their gazes filled with respect and awe. News of their exploits at Marineford had already reached Veldoria, and their return as emperors was met with cheers. Welcome back, Lord Rimuru, Lady Ultima. One of their commanders shouted, bowing deeply. We've been awaiting your return. Ultima grinned, waving at the gathered crowd. Miss us. Rimuru stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. Prepare for a meeting. We have much to discuss. Yes, my lord. The soldiers responded in unison, quickly moving to carry out his orders. Ultima nudged Rimuru playfully. Look at you, all serious and commanding. No wonder you're so popular. Rimuru rolled his eyes, though a smile tugged at his lips. Just doing what needs to be done. As they walked through the bustling streets of Veldoria's capital, Ultima glanced at the towering fortress that stood at the center of the island, their headquarters. You know, she said thoughtfully, with the power we have now, we could reshape the entire New World. Rimuru nodded. That's the plan. But first, we need to make sure our base is secure. We can't let anyone think we're vulnerable, especially now that we've taken Whitebeard's place. And once we've done that, Ultima added, a mischievous glint in her eyes, we can start hunting down anyone who thinks they can challenge us. Rimuru smirked. Exactly. They reached the entrance to the fortress, the massive gates opening to welcome them inside. As they stepped through, Ultima paused, glancing back at the horizon where the sea stretched out endlessly. Things are going to get interesting, Rimuru, she said, her tone both excited and serious. We're Yonko now. The world's going to be watching our every move. Rimuru placed a hand on her shoulder, his gaze steady. Let them watch. We'll show them what true power looks like. With that, they entered the fortress, ready to begin the next chapter of their reign. The new world was theirs for the taking, and as Yonko, Rimuru and Ultima were ready to carve their names into history. As they settled into their command room, Ultima leaned back in her chair, propping her feet up on the table. So, what's the first move, King Rimuru? Rimuru, sitting across from her, rolled his eyes at the title but didn't protest. We start by consolidating our territory. Whitebeard's islands are scattered, and there will be challengers. We need to secure them before anyone else makes a move. Ultima nodded, her expression serious now. And the other Yonko, we'll need to keep an eye on them, Rimuru replied. Kaido, Big Mom, and Shanks won't take our rise lightly. They may try to test us. Ultima grinned. Let them try. We'll crush anyone who stands in our way. Rimuru's eyes gleamed with determination. Exactly. But for now, let's focus on Veldoria. We need to make sure our home is ready for whatever comes next. Agreed, Ultima said, her grin widening. And once we've secured our base, we'll make our move. The new world won't know what hit them. As they sat in their fortress, plotting their next steps, the future of the new world seemed brighter, and more dangerous, than ever. But Rimuru and Ultima were ready for whatever came their way. They were Yonko now, and the world was theirs for the taking. After the intense battle at Marineford and their rise as new Yonko, Rimuru and Ultima returned to their domain, Veldoria Island, with a single goal in mind: strengthen their army. The entire island had been a hive of activity for the past month, as their soldiers trained relentlessly under the supervision of their ruthless commanders. Inside the grand hall of their castle, Rimuru and Ultima stood side by side, observing the final sparring sessions between the soldiers. The stone walls echoed with the clash of weapons and shouts of combat, but the two figures remained calm and collected, strategizing their next move. 1 month of intense training. I can already see the difference, Rimuru said, crossing his arms, a slight smirk forming on his lips. The soldiers are sharper, stronger. Ultima, standing with her usual air of authority, gave a nod of agreement. Our army has made tremendous progress, but now it's time to reward those who've truly risen above the rest. Her eyes gleamed as she turned to Rimuru. It's time to make the promotions. Rimuru gestured to one of the commanders, who quickly signaled the gathering of the entire army. The hall soon filled with hundreds of soldiers, standing in disciplined lines. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as they all knew that today would mark a significant moment for Veldoria Island. Ultima took a step forward, her voice commanding and sharp. Sylphira Nightfang, step forward. A figure from the crowd emerged, Sylphira Nightfang, her presence alone commanding respect. Her long, silver hair shimmered in the torchlight, and her piercing gaze reflected the fierce loyalty she held for Rimuru and Ultima. Sylphira's reputation was well known among the soldiers, a master of hockey of armament, with an iron will and an unshakable devotion to the cause. Sylphira, Rimuru addressed her with authority. Over the past month, you have proven yourself in ways that have surpassed our expectations. You've mastered all 3 forms of hockey, and your advanced armament hockey is among the finest in our army. Therefore, we are promoting you to the rank of general. Sylphira bowed low, her voice steady and respectful. Thank you, Lord Rimuru, Lady Ultima. I swear my loyalty to you both. I will lead our army to victory. Ultima stepped forward and placed her hand on Sylphira's shoulder. Your power is undeniable, Sylphira. You've earned this position. Do not disappoint us. I will not, Sylphira responded, her voice full of confidence. The soldiers cheered for their new general, but Ultima quickly silenced them with a wave of her hand. Kalis Drakenshade, step forward. Kalis, the towering and stoic general, stepped out of the ranks. His dark armor gleamed, and his eyes held the intensity of a man who had faced countless battles. He had been Rimuru and Ultima's most trusted general for years, but today marked the recognition of his growth. Kalis, Rimuru began, you have always been a fierce warrior and a master of strategy. But over the last month, you've gone beyond the limits of ordinary men. You've unlocked the power of advanced observation hockey and advanced conqueror's hockey. This evolution is worthy of acknowledgement. Ultima nodded in agreement. With your power, Kalis, our enemies will tremble before us. You will continue to serve as our general, but now with even greater responsibilities. Kalis bowed, his deep voice reverberating through the hall. It is an honor, Lord Rimuru, Lady Ultima. I will lead with the power you have entrusted me with. As the soldiers roared their approval, a familiar squawk echoed through the room. A seagull swooped in, carrying 2 large wanted posters in its beak. Rimuru caught them, his eyes quickly scanning the images before smirking. Sylphira Nightfang, Rimuru announced, showing her bounty poster to the crowd. Your bounty is now 1,060,000,000 berries. Sylphira looked at the poster with a mix of pride and determination. Seems they're finally recognizing my strength. And Kalis Drakenshade, Ultima added, raising his poster. Yours is now 1,256,000,000 berries. Kalis merely nodded, unfazed by the recognition. It's only the beginning, he muttered, his eyes focused on the future. Rimuru handed the posters to them both. These bounties are not just a measure of your strength, but a warning to those who would dare oppose us. But now, we have more important matters to discuss. Ultima took a step forward, her expression sharp and focused. It's time to claim what's ours. Whitebeard is dead, and his territories are up for grabs. We killed him, so those lands are rightfully ours. The room fell silent, every soldier hanging on to Ultima's words. The idea of expanding their territory was a tempting one, and it was clear that no one would stand in their way. We'll take the territories by force if we have to, Rimuru said with a grin. No one can oppose us now. Not with our army, and certainly not with our power. Kalis and Sylphira exchanged glances, both of them eager to lead their soldiers into battle. They had been preparing for this moment, and the idea of conquering Whitebeard's territories filled them with anticipation. We leave at dawn, Ultima declared. Prepare the ship and assemble the army. We're setting sail for Whitebeard's former territories. By the time we return, Veldoria will have expanded beyond anyone's imagination. Yes, Lady Ultima, the soldiers shouted in unison, their voices echoing through the grand hall. As the crowd dispersed to prepare for the upcoming campaign, Rimuru and Ultima stood side by side, watching. Their soldiers with pride. Their kingdom was growing stronger by the day, and now, with the addition of Whitebeard's territories, they would become an unstoppable force in the New World. The following morning, the sun rose over Veldoria Island, casting a golden glow over the massive ship docked at the harbor. Soldiers moved swiftly, loading supplies and weapons onto the ship, while Kalis and Sylphira oversaw the preparations with military precision. Rimuru and Ultima stood at the helm, gazing out at the horizon. Whitebeard's territories will soon be ours, Rimuru said confidently. And once we take control, the new world will recognize us as the true rulers, Ultima added, her eyes gleaming with ambition. Kalis approached, his armor clinking softly as he bowed before them. The ship is ready, my lord and lady. We can set sail at your command. Rimuru nodded. Then let's begin. The world has no idea what's coming. Ultima turned to Sylphira, who was standing at attention near the ship's edge. You've trained your soldiers well, Sylphira. Now, let's see if they can conquer like they've been trained to. Sylphira grinned, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. They won't disappoint you, Lady Ultima. We'll take those territories with ease. As the ship pulled away from the harbor, the wind filling its sails, Rimuru and Ultima stood at the front, watching their island fade into the distance. Their army was strong, their generals even stronger, and now they were heading to claim what was rightfully theirs. With each passing wave, the anticipation grew. Soon, Whitebeard's territories would be under their control, and Veldanava Island would become a kingdom feared across the entire New World. To victory, Rimuru said with a grin. To domination, Ultima added, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The ship sailed forward, cutting through the ocean with purpose. Rimuru, Ultima, and their unstoppable army were on the move, ready to claim their rightful place as the true rulers of the New World. As they sailed deeper into the sea, the horizon began to reveal the distant outlines of Whitebeard's former territories. Their conquest had begun, and nothing would stand in their way. The sun was high over Sphinx Island, casting an unforgiving light on the battlefield. Rimuru and Ultima stood atop a hill overlooking the chaos, their gazes fixed on the battles below. The once peaceful island was now filled with the sound of clashing weapons, cries of war, and the occasional rumble of collapsing structures. This was the final stand of Whitebeard's forces, the remnants of a once mighty crew. And it was about to fall. In the skies above, the battle between Sylphira Nightfang and Marco the Phoenix raged on. Sylphira's advanced armament hockey coated her every strike, allowing her to block and parry Marco's fiery talons and strikes, even as his phoenix flames attempted to scorch her. Marco's phoenix form glowed brilliantly in the sunlight, his azure flames flaring with each attack, but Sylphira was relentless. You're persistent, I'll give you that, Marco grunted, his eyes narrowing as he unleashed another flame-covered kick towards Sylphira. Sylphira smirked, effortlessly dodging the attack with the grace of a predator toying with its prey. Persistent, I'm just getting started, bird boy. She spun midair, delivering a powerful slash aimed at his wings. Marco barely had time to block the attack, gritting his teeth as the force of Sylphira's blow sent shockwaves through the air. He could feel his strength waning. Each strike from Sylphira was imbued with not only incredible power but also precision. Her hockey was leagues beyond most he'd faced, and she was gaining ground. Meanwhile, on the battlefield below, Kalis Drakenshade was locked in a fierce struggle with Jozu, Whitebeard's former 3rd Division commander. Jozu, the man with the diamond body, was usually impervious to most attacks, but Kalis's mastery of armament hockey was wearing him down. Jozu's gleaming diamond-covered arms were chipping away under Kalis's relentless assault, and his stamina was running out. Kalis dashed forward, his speed leaving afterimages in his wake. You're tough, Jozu, I'll give you that. But let's see how long you can last without your arms. His voice was calm, cold, calculated. Jozu, panting and bleeding from multiple wounds, gritted his teeth as he raised his diamond-coated arms to block another strike. But this time, Kalis was faster, stronger. His hockey-imbued sword sliced clean through Jozu's diamond-encrusted limbs, sending shards of diamond and blood flying through the air. Jozu screamed in pain as both of his arms were severed, falling to the ground with a sickening thud. That's enough, Jozu gasped, barely able to stand. Kalis smirked, stepping forward and driving his hand straight into Jozu's chest, piercing his heart in a single, swift movement. You fought well, but this is where your journey ends. He yanked Jozu's heart from his chest and tossed it aside, watching as the giant collapsed lifelessly to the ground. Back on the battlefield, Rimuru and Ultima surveyed the scene. Their army, the soldiers they had trained personally, was dominating the remaining Whitebeard pirates. The battlefield was littered with bodies, and the Whitebeard soldiers who were still standing were struggling to keep up. Ultima, looks like it's time to end this, Rimuru said, his voice calm yet authoritative. Ultima grinned wickedly. I couldn't agree more. She closed her eyes for a moment, focusing her hockey. Her conqueror's haki, advanced to a level few could even comprehend, began to emanate from her body in waves, spreading across the battlefield like an unseen force. The Whitebeard pirates, already battered and broken, felt an overwhelming pressure crash down on them. One by one, they began to fall, collapsing unconscious under the weight of Ultima's conqueror's haki. Those who were still barely conscious were too weak to move. The once proud remnants of Whitebeard's crew were now completely at the mercy of Ultima's forces. Pathetic, Ultima muttered, her voice filled with disdain as she glanced down at the unconscious bodies. Kill them all. Her soldiers, loyal and ruthless, didn't hesitate. They descended upon the fallen Whitebeard pirates like vultures, cutting down every last one without mercy. Blood soaked the ground as the soldiers of Rimuru and Ultima slaughtered the defeated pirates. With the battle below nearly over, all eyes turned back to the sky where the final confrontation was still raging, Sylphira versus Marco. Marco, still in his phoenix form, was panting heavily, his regenerative abilities struggling to keep up with the damage Sylphira was dealing. His azure flames flickered weakly, his stamina almost entirely drained. Damn it, he muttered under his breath. She's too strong. Sylphira, unfazed and still full of energy, hovered in front of him with a confident smirk. Looks like your little flame is burning out, Marco. I expected more from the right-hand man of Whitebeard. Marco's eyes burned with determination. I won't go down so easily. Not for Ace, not for Pops. With a defiant roar, Marco launched himself at Sylphira once more, his talons gleaming as they slashed through the air. But Sylphira was ready. She coated her arms in advanced armament haki, her muscles rippling with power as she caught Marco's flaming talons with her bare hands. Impressive, Sylphira taunted, tightening her grip. But not enough. With a sudden burst of strength, she twisted her body, hurling Marco toward the ground with such force that the impact caused the earth below to crack and tremble. Marco, now in his human form, lay in the massive crater, coughing up blood as he struggled to get back on his feet. I can't let this happen, Marco gasped, wiping the blood from his mouth. I promised I'd protect his legacy. Sylphira landed gracefully beside him, her eyes cold and unfeeling. You failed. Whitebeard's era is over. And soon, so will you. Without another word, Sylphira raised her haki-coated fist and brought it down onto Marco's chest. The impact shattered bone and crushed his lungs, leaving him gasping for breath. Blood pooled around him as he coughed and sputtered. You won't get away with this. Marco wheezed, his vision fading. Sylphira knelt down, grabbing him by the throat and lifting him effortlessly into the air. Oh, but we already have. With one final squeeze, she snapped Marco's neck, his lifeless body hanging limply in her grasp. She tossed his body aside like a ragdoll, her face devoid of emotion. It's done, she said simply, glancing up at Rimuru and Ultima. Rimuru nodded approvingly. Well done, Sylphira. Ultima grinned, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Sphinx Island is ours. The last of Whitebeard's forces are gone. Kalis, having finished his own battle, approached Rimuru and Ultima, his sword still dripping with Josu's blood. The island is secured. What's next? Rimuru turned his gaze towards the horizon. We'll take the rest of Whitebeard's territory. Every island, every base, every stronghold. We will claim it all. Ultima's smile widened. And anyone who dares resist us will meet the same fate as Marco and Josu. The soldiers of Rimuru and Ultima, having finished their slaughter of the remaining Whitebeard pirates, began to regroup. Their bloodlust had been sated for now, but they knew that more battles lay ahead. Prepare the ship, Rimuru ordered. We're not done yet. As their forces began to gather, Rimuru and Ultima exchanged a glance. They had come far, but this was only the beginning of their reign over the New World. With the death of Whitebeard and the fall of his territories, they were poised to become the most feared rulers in the seas. Sphinx Island, once the proud home of Whitebeard, now lay under their control. The people of the island, too terrified to resist, had no choice but to submit to their new rulers. And with the fall of Whitebeard's remnants, there was no one left to challenge them. Rimuru and Ultima stood atop the hill, overlooking their victory. The new world was theirs for the taking, and no one would stand in their way. As the sun began to set, casting a blood-red glow over the battlefield, Ultima turned to Rimuru. Shall we move on to the next island? Rimuru nodded, his eyes gleaming with ambition. Yes, the rest of Whitebeard's legacy awaits. And with that, they set sail once more, ready to conquer all that lay before them. As their ship cut smoothly through the open sea, Rimuru and Ultima stood side by side on the deck, watching the sun glisten over the waves. It had been weeks since the war against Whitebeard's former territories began. With each island they conquered, their power grew, and their reputation spread far and wide. Yet, there was only one island they hadn't laid claim to, Fishman Island, now under the protection of Big Mom. Rimuru looked at Ultima, his eyes calm but thoughtful. I still can't believe we're leaving Fishman Island untouched, he said, his voice contemplative. It feels odd not to dominate it like the others. Ultima shrugged, her lips curling into a playful smirk. As fun as it would be to claim it, it's not worth dealing with Big Mom right now. One Yonko war at a time, Rimuru. We don't need unnecessary distractions. Rimuru chuckled, shaking his head. True enough. One battle at a time. We'll deal with her eventually. The sea breeze ruffled Ultima's long hair as she gazed at the horizon. They had claimed almost all of Whitebeard's former territories, easily crushing any remnants of resistance. With his crew dead, most of the islands had fallen without much of a fight. Speaking of which, we've pretty much secured all the other islands, haven't we? Ultima asked, her tone more serious now. Nothing left to challenge us. Rimuru nodded. We've crushed any resistance that remained. It's just a matter of consolidating power and ruling those territories now. The citizens had no choice but to submit once their protectors were gone. Ultima smiled darkly, the glint of ambition shining in her eyes. Perfect. This world is finally starting to take shape under our rule. Just then, a loud screech echoed through the sky. The sound of wings flapping approached, and a seagull descended toward the deck. One of the ship's crew members quickly fetched the paper tied to the bird's leg and handed it to Rimuru. A newspaper already? Ultima tilted her head, curious. Let's see what they're saying about us now. Rimuru unfolded the newspaper, skimming through the headlines until he stopped at the bounty section. His eyes widened slightly, a small smile tugging at his lips. Well, it looks like Sylphira and Kalis have become quite popular. At the sound of her name, Sylphira stepped forward from the shadows, intrigued. What is it? She asked, folding her arms across her chest. Rimuru turned the paper around, showing Sylphira her new bounty. Congratulations, Sylphira, your bounty has risen to 1,380,000,000 berries. Sylphira's violet eyes gleamed with pride, a grin spreading across her face. Is that so? I knew they'd notice my strength eventually. She puffed out her chest proudly. I'm the strongest general in this crew, after all. But then, her gaze flickered over to Kalis, who was also standing nearby, and her grin widened. And what about Kalis? Rimuru flipped the page, revealing Kalis's bounty. Kalis's new bounty is 1,348,000,000 berries. Sylphira's grin turned smug as she strolled over to Kalis, circling him like a predator eyeing its prey. Oh dear, Kalis, she teased, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. Looks like you're falling behind. Less than me, even after all your hard work. Kalis's expression remained stoic, but a small vein pulsed on his temple. He shot her a sharp look. I'm not interested in childish games, Sylphira. A bounty means nothing. Strength speaks louder. Oh, Sylphira's grin only grew wider. Is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night? Well, the world seems to think differently. Kalis clenched his fists, his aura darkening as a slight burst of haki emanated from him. Careful, Sylphira, your bounty might be higher, but that doesn't mean you're stronger. Is that a challenge? She asked with a mischievous glint in her eye. Before the tension could escalate any further, Rimuru stepped between them, raising a hand. That's enough, he said, his voice calm but firm. We don't have time for infighting. Save your energy for our real enemies. Ultima, who had been watching the exchange with amusement, finally spoke up. Sylphira, cut it out. We're not here to fight amongst ourselves. Besides, Rimuru's right. A bounty isn't everything. Sylphira sighed, her playful demeanor fading slightly. Fine, I was just having a little fun. Kalis relaxed his fists, but his eyes remained focused on Sylphira. He wasn't one for banter, but he wouldn't let her disrespect him so easily. Still, he knew better than to provoke a real fight in front of their leaders. Rimuru handed the newspaper to Sylphira, who took it and skimmed over her own bounty, her grin returning. It's nice to be acknowledged though, she murmured. Even if it's just numbers. Ultima chuckled and patted Sylphira's shoulder. You've earned it. Both of you have. We couldn't have crushed Whitebeard's remnants without you two. Kalis gave a nod of appreciation, though his eyes remained watchful of Sylphira. We were just doing our duty. Speaking of which, Ultima added, turning her gaze toward the horizon, we're almost home. Veldanava Island should be coming into view soon. Rimuru glanced over the water, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the distance. Good. It's time to regroup and focus on ruling our territories. We've taken enough land, but now we need to establish real control. Sylphira leaned against the ship's railing, staring at the endless ocean. Ruling will be easy. It's the rebellions that will be fun to crush. Kalis glanced at her, unimpressed. You think too much about bloodshed, Sylphira. Ruling isn't just about crushing your enemies. It's about maintaining order. Sylphira shrugged, not particularly bothered by his disapproval. I leave the boring stuff to you, Kalis. I'm more interested in keeping our enemies in line. Before their banter could continue, one of the crew members called out from the crow's nest. Land ho! Rimuru turned toward the horizon, and there it was, Veldanava Island, their territory, their home. A sense of satisfaction washed over him as the island drew closer. Ultima smiled, folding her arms as she watched the island grow larger in the distance. Home sweet home, she muttered. It's been a long journey, but we're finally back. Rimuru nodded, though his mind was already racing with thoughts of their next steps. Once we land, we'll need to consolidate power across all the territories we've taken. Make sure every island knows who's in charge now. Sylphira grinned. I can handle that. I'll make sure no one forgets who their new rulers are. Kalis, ever the strategist, added, we should also establish a network of loyal soldiers on each island. If rebellions start, we'll need forces to crush them quickly. Rimuru nodded, appreciating Kalis's foresight. Agreed. We can't afford any weak links. As the ship sailed closer to Veldanava Island, Ultima stretched her arms above her head, her muscles tense from the long voyage. I'm ready to relax for a bit. This war has been exhausting. Rimuru smirked. You say that now, but I bet in a day or two you'll be itching for another fight. Ultima chuckled. You know me too well. Sylphira, still holding the newspaper, glanced down at her bounty one last time before folding it up and tucking it into her pocket. Well, let's make sure our return is grand. It's time to remind Veldanava who their rulers are. Kalis, ever composed, stood beside her, his gaze fixed on the island. This is just the beginning. We've taken Whitebeard's territories, but there's still much more to be done. Rimuru and Ultima exchanged a glance, both of them feeling the same surge of ambition. They had come so far, but their journey to complete domination was far from over. With their generals by their side and their territories secured, they were ready to carve their names into the new world. The ship docked on the shores of Veldanava Island, and as Rimuru, Ultima, Sylphira, and Kalis disembarked, a sense of power and purpose filled the air. This was only the beginning of their reign. To be continued.